The United States and Israel's war on Iran has triggered one of the biggest shocks to global aviation since the 2020 COVID pandemic, disrupting flights, doubling fuel costs, which has led to increased airfares, casting doubts over upcoming summer travel season. When the conflict escalated in the February 2026, the first shock was immediate. Airspace across large parts of the Middle East, including Iran, Iraq, Israel, Qatar, and the UAE, suddenly became unsafe for civilian aircraft. Now, these are not minor flight paths. They are some of the most important aviation corridors on Earth, linking Europe to Asia and connecting major global hubs like Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. Within just 1 week of the escalation, flight tracking data showed more than 19,000 flights cancelled globally. Within days, the number climbed to over 20,000 and possibly as high as 23,000 cancellations worldwide. At the peak of the disruption, between 1,900 and 2,600 flights were being cancelled in a single day. Millions of passengers were stranded and airlines around the world scrambled to respond.
This is probably the biggest aviation shock since COVID, but different in nature. COVID killed demand, but this crisis is hitting supply routes, fuel, and operating costs at the same time.
To understand why this conflict hit aviation so hard, you need to look at the geography of global air travel. Many of the world's busiest routes, especially Europe to Asia flights, normally pass through Middle Eastern airspace. When that airspace closed, airlines had to take longer detours north or south, flying over places like Central Asia or the Indian Ocean. That can add 2 to 5 hours to some long-haul flights.
Long-haul aviation is planned months ahead. If major corridors close, then airlines need new overflight permissions, more fuel, crew changes, longer duty times, and sometimes a different aircraft plan.
And that extra flying means one thing, more fuel. But fuel is exactly what the industry is now struggling to secure. Jet fuel is the single biggest cost for airlines. In normal times, it accounts for about 25 to 30% of airline operating costs. Since the war began, jet fuel prices have nearly doubled. Before the conflict, jet fuel in the United States was roughly $2 to $2.50 per gallon. By early April, it had climbed to almost $5 per gallon. Globally, the jet fuel benchmark price jumped from about $100 a barrel to nearly $200. That's a 95% increase in just a few weeks. And this is where geopolitics enters the aviation story. About 1/5 of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway between Iran and the Gulf states. When that route was effectively blocked during the conflict, the global fuel supply chain was shaken. Now Europe is warning that some airports may have as little as 6 weeks of jet fuel supply left if the disruption continues.
It is already getting evident. It's not that this is going to happen tomorrow. It is happening right now. It has begun happening even today. If you look at many airlines all around the globe have started to reduce their number of flights. I could see it even in North America, which is quite self-sufficient in crude oil and its refined products. Even in North America, one could see that even with the summer season approaching, when people travel a lot, the number of flights go up. Even at this stage, most of the airlines have started to cut down their operations. And one of the reasons behind it is these jet fuel scarcity and the possible scarcity of jet fuel. This is happening in the UK, Europe as well. British Airlines and other airlines have started to cut down their flights to different places of the world. and especially the domestic and within Europe flights. And interestingly, this all is happening around when the summer peak traveling season is approaching. It is not only just jet fuel, it is going to basically impact the entire transportation system. Prices are going up. It's not just this scarcity. Because of that, the prices are also going up. So people are in fact, they would be driving less and less in this driving season in North America as well. The rising prices is going to impact diesel, is going to impact gasoline, and of course jet fuel and all these products. Now, because of the gasoline, even the common man is going to drive less and less. People like me are conscious about this fact that at this stage, the prices of gas or petrol as they are called in Pakistan are up. So in order to balance their budget, they are reducing it. So this is impacting the entire world in one way or the other. And if this doesn't get resolved over the next few days, we are in for bad times from many perspectives, from many, many angles. Flying and aviation is just one major aspect of it.
Airlines have only a few ways to respond to rising fuel costs. They can cancel flights, they can reduce routes, or they can change passengers more. And right now, they're doing all three. Airfares on some long-haul routes have risen 20 to 50% or more in extreme cases, especially on Asia-Europe routes affected by rerouting. Prices have surged as much as 300 to 560%. Some airlines are also introducing fuel surcharges, sometimes adding $50, $200, even up to $800 to certain tickets. Even domestic flights in the United States have seen prices rise sharply. On some routes, average fares rose from about $167 to more than $400.
Well, part of it is temporary fuel volatility, but if the fuel stays high and airspace remains restricted, then higher fares will become structural. Airlines cannot absorb this indefinitely. They will have to pass it to the passengers.
The second response from airlines has been to cut capacity. Some airlines have reduced their schedules by 5 to 20%. Lufthansa alone is cutting 20,000 short-haul flights. United Airlines has trimmed around 5% of its global schedule, and Gulf carriers like Emirates, Qatar Airways, and Etihad have been among the hardest hit because their entire business model depends on Middle Eastern hubs. At the peak of the disruption, some of these airlines saw 20 to 35% of their capacity disappear overnight.
Thin long-haul routes are at most risk. Airlines will protect their profitable routes and reduce routes where fuel rerouting and weak demand destroys the margin.
Europe may face the most immediate risk. The European Union imports 30 to 40% of its jet fuel, and about half of those imports normally come from the Middle East. Because of the war, European officials are now considering several emergency steps. These include importing more jet fuel from the United States, creating a minimum emergency stockpile for aviation fuel, and launching a fuel monitoring system to track supply levels. For now, European officials insist there are no actual shortages yet, but the aviation industry is watching closely as the summer travel season approaches. June to August is normally the busiest travel season of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. Before the conflict began, the industry expected another record summer, possibly 3.2 to 3.4 billion passengers globally. The war has already disrupted those forecasts. Forward bookings on some key routes are down by 10 to 20%, and if fuel supplies tighten further, airlines may have no choice but to cancel hundreds more flights just as the peak travel season begins. Some forecasts suggest that global flight capacity could fall 5 to 15% below last year's levels. That would make this the weakest summer travel season since the pandemic recovery began.
Well, it may not collapse like COVID, but it could be materially weaker then the last summer's travel boom. The main risk is not lack of demand, it is higher fares, fewer seats, and operational uncertainty.
Even if the conflict stabilizes tomorrow, aviation supply chains take time to recover. Fuel shipments, refinery adjustments, and rerouted supply lines can take 5 to 6 weeks to normalize. That means the aviation industry would still feel the effects of this crisis well into the summer travel season. In other words, the war may not only reshape geopolitics, it most likely will also reshape how and how often the world flies.
The risk is real, as IATA has warned that fuel shortages could cause cancellations in Europe by end of May, and you have already heard that Lufthansa has cancelled 20,000 flights. While parts of Asia are already affected, peak demand with tight fuel supply is dangerous combination. It means that a lot of people want to fly, but airlines don't have enough fuel to operate all the flights.